Patrick Machado. I work for Critical Software, and I've been working in Critical Software in the payments area for some years. And in this particular case, we have been also working in some of our clients in the subject of EPI.
Okay. Under what capacity?
We are working in the issuer side to integrate into the EPI system.
Okay. Who knows what is EPI? Basically, EPI stands for European Payments Initiative, right? So I see that some people know. Maybe some people are a bit shy, but let me explain what is EPI. So basically, Europe has one problem, right? If we discuss payments in Europe, there is one problem. So what is the problem in Europe? That we don't own any rails, right? So if you look at who is doing payments today globally, you're gonna bump into names like Visa, like MasterCard, like PayPal, like Amazon, like you name it. I mean, there is one common thing that all these names have, and it's that they are not European. They're coming from the US. So Europe had always the problem. I think that's probably a big discussion when it comes to your stuff, that we don't have any independency, right? And I think when it comes, I mean, to the pandemic, when it comes to the war in Ukraine, I mean, we have seen that payments is becoming a critical infrastructure. So it was always an issue for the Europeans, and they were actually, there were a few projects that they were trying to build, a European payments infrastructure. I think we did have 3 or 4 initiatives in the past, and guess what? They all failed. So now there's another one. We can discuss if this one is going to be successful or not, but maybe it is our last chance to do something. So that's why we're discussing today the API. So my first question would be the following, because you're now, before discussing specifically about API. So there is one, I mean, I would put it like this. We have, in terms of payments, we have the rails, the road, and we have the car, right? A car needs a road to travel. All the discussions that we have been having so far, or most of the discussions, have been focusing on the road, on the rails. Open banking is rails. Instant payments is rails. SEPA credit transfer is rails. Is the road, right? Okay, we have built a great road. We are, let's say, building a broader road. What is a car traveling on this road? Do we have a car? I would argue that we probably don't have a car. So EPI is probably one of the cars. So what do you think?
Yes, I really like the car analogy because we could argue, well, we have SEPA instant transfers, but they are hard to make nowadays. So if I want to transfer, and I need to know the IBAN, I need to know a lot of things. So
it's the road.
Yes,
it's the rails.
It's the road.
It's not a car.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So EPI, I think, is one of the first initiatives that is proposing itself to be this car, to be something that you make a payment very easily, and you also take advantage of the road that already exists, and that you don't have to build it from scratch.
It's about building a car. Do you agree?
Yes.
Is it about building a car or?
Yeah. I do agree, because the rails are here. I would argue cheaper than whatever MasterCard and Visa can, or the national card schemes that are probably one of the reasons why we don't have a EU or pan-European card scheme cheaper than them. You know, that was an explicit target when TIPS was being built. Exactly. to make it as efficient, as cost competitive as possible.
Sorry, do you want to explain what is TIPS? Does everybody know what is TIPS?
TIPS, it's the instant euro payment infrastructure run by ECB and the euro system. So
basically SEPA Instant and SEPA ICT is running on TIPS.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure I know it by heart, but I think it's like 1 euro cent, or no, it's 2 euro cents per payment, and now it's split between the sending and the receiving bank.
It's quite competitive, right?
Yeah,
it's quite
so I would call it even super competitive. But the thing that the reason why after 20 years we actually now have a Union Pay card in Europe, right? But it's China Union Pay. So the reason is that the network effects in payments are extreme, right? It makes sense to use a kind of payment that everybody accepts, and once this space is taken, coming up with a competition is really hard. So that's a two-sentence explanation why we haven't really seen anything pan-European coming up. And the question is, for me, personal opinion, by now it's is it gonna be EPI or is it gonna be digital euro, right? By now, because one of the two is gonna be the pan-European solution, and it was actually quite interesting for me at the beginning. EPI looked like a much more pan-European effort than it is now. I think there were Spanish banks, there was even a Polish state-owned bank for a while. Then it sort of slimmed down. And if you look at the timelines, that's when ECB started really talking digital euro up. So it was basically maybe the Eurozone's banks' last chance to build a card themselves.
If I may add on that, I think we are also seeing some of these countries that left. They are kind of organizing themselves in this European mobile payments institution.
Do you want to explain a bit the history for everyone? Because I'm not sure if everyone knows that the EPI initially was much broader in terms of scope and in terms of participants, and then we had a downsize. So do you want to explain?
I guess the first live of EPI was even earlier, like 2014 or 13.
No, 2019.
I think that is like, I think it was called pan-European by then in that name. In 2019, there was this large.
You're referring to a different name because I said.
Yes, a different name.
In the past, there were 3-4 initiatives.
Yes.
The target was the same, but if we talk EPI.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I would differentiate.
You started exactly, that moment in time. Yes.
So I think EPI just initially it was only about.
Yes, initially I think that they had more ambition. They had, I think, ambition of a wallet and a card scheme, and there were a lot of countries. I think I'd say most Europe was represented by then. Then I think 2 or something years ago, I don't know exactly when, most of them left. Now the countries that are more into EPI are those from Central Europe, France, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium. And what we are seeing also is that some countries that are left are now trying to build some interoperability solutions by themselves, kind of building this roaming concept instead of something from top down, building something from bottom up as well, complementing the digital euro.
Yeah. So the main difference is that EPI, I mean, initially the idea was to build a card scheme, right? Competition to Visa and MasterCard. But building a card scheme takes, it's a very complex thing. It's very costly, and that's why you had many banks that were participating initially in the EPI, which was mostly a political decision. I mean, to be very open and transparent, it's not that these banks were, they said, okay, one day they woke up and they said, okay, what do we do? Let's build EPI. We have this brilliant idea, and by the way, somebody else has this idea. So this was political driven, as it was also political driven that some countries and their banks they pulled out of the EPI. Because you mentioned the digital euro, do you really think that these are competitive? Because to be honest, I mean, if you go to Brussels, I think you're gonna hear many people advocating that they are gonna be working together. And basically, the digital euro, when they did the pilot, EPI was one of the 5 companies that were taking part in the pilot. So I don't know, how do you see this, Mikhail?
Well, it's true that digital euro is rails and a car in one package, right? As at least in the regulation that has been proposed, it's foreseen that ECB will also develop its own end user interface, an application to use it. So in that sense, they're perhaps complementary. Either the EPI could use also digital euro rails, or maybe I think a third piece of the puzzle is the European digital identity wallets from ADAS tool, because at least when you look at I'm not a Brussels insider, but when you look at the dates, you see the digital euro perhaps 2027, EU digital identity wallets with the SCA and payment initiation also, and mandatory acceptance also 2027. But that it's something that could also help EPI as well, to get this. If you mandate the network effect, that probably makes it much more cheaper, because you outsource a lot of the costs through regulation.
Okay. So
I think, well, you mentioned 2027. I think, to be honest, I think a bit optimistic, taking into consideration the time then it takes for implementation, and the moment where someone would be able to download an application and use it effectively, I believe will be much later, which gives a lot of opportunity for EPI to develop in the time between. Although I think from a use case perspective, they will compete in a lot of scenarios. Those send money, pay in a merchant store, pay in a physical store, scan a QR code. Those will be similar, although conceptually they will differ in some
but
aspects.
they have the benefit of the time. So EPI is actually EPI. Who knows when EPI is launching? Have you heard? In a couple of months, actually.
This year, yes.
This summer. But they are launching, so they are having a staged approach, a phased approach, right? So they are launching essentially with a P2P, peer-to-peer use case. And if you see what has been happening around Europe, all the local schemes that have been successful, they started from peers. So I send money to my friends. I get to know how this is done. I get to know to trust the app, and then of course, then that's a good springboard for making the next step. So they're basically launching the peer-to-peer functionality during the summer. I don't know. Do you want to? Do you know the timeline?
More or less. So last year they did this proof of concept with a transfer. CEOs of two banks transfer money between themselves, back and forth, 10 euros back and forth, to prove the concept. And this year it will go live exactly with peer-to-peer transfers, and then in the next years the rest of the functionalities will follow.
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe it makes sense mentioning the geographies, right? So basically,
not Czech Republic as far as I know, so I'd leave that to you.
So it's basically Germany and France, right? So they are being launched, and it's also the Netherlands and Belgium. And EPI, basically, they bought two companies some time ago, right? So they bought a company called Ideal. So in the Netherlands, I don't know who is from the Netherlands or has been in the Netherlands, but if you don't have Ideal, then you cannot do many things. So Ideal is a local payments method, account to account, and they're basically having 7% of the market, something like this. So they bought Ideal, and the idea is to use Ideal, not to have to build this from scratch. And they also bought a company, a provider, which is called Payconic in Belgium, to do the same. So the idea is that they launch in these countries. They are discussing with other countries, and then I think they are targeting to launch other use cases like consumer to business, e-commerce, POS later on in 2025 and 2026. But just one point, and I think it makes sense to discuss this. So basically, EPI is a car, as you said before. So basically, EPI is running on SEPA instant rails, right?
Yes.
So in terms of the challenges, I don't know, what would you say are the challenges and what is the opportunity? And then I would ask the same question to Mikhail.
I start with the opportunities. I think the first and more obvious is that it's something that is being built and it's going live this year. So it's not an idea, and this will take time, and they will use this time to gain traction. Also, the acquisition of ITL helps to solve this chicken and egg problem. And also they are in this sweet spot where they are building from scratch what is the added value layer and their core business, and they are taking advantage from these SEP rails for settlement, which means they will not develop new concepts, and they can focus on good security concepts that they are building with modern technology, with agile teams, and this will enable them to go really quick as the opportunity. As for challenges, I think while they are fast, they are working almost like a fintech. When they are integrating into payment service,
debate, but okay. Yeah.
Okay, when they are integrating with issuer banks, for instance, things go a little bit slower, and it will take some time to gain traction. And after that, they will still have to convince the rest of Europe that this makes sense, so that that for merchants, for banks, for customers, that this is a win-win-win situation.
Exactly.
I think there's potential there, but it will take some time. And in geographies where there are strong players, an example here in Portugal, MBWay, and strong brands, it will be much harder to do so, in my opinion.
Mikhail, what do you think?
Well, if I start with the opportunities, I think Apple Pay changed a lot of the mathematics on the side of the issuing banks, at least in Czech Republic. I don't know how much Apple Pay takes in your countries, but the number I saw in
Similar.
The number I saw in Czech Republic, there's not much left of the regulated interchange fee. So I think the issuing banks are ready for getting some of those some of the income back.
The question is, are the consumers ready?
That's true, and I'm saying that as somebody who resisted iPhone for a long time, but I find the convenience, especially not just on the point of sale, but the integration in the apps. And Netflix was mentioned today. You have to think about these big companies. They don't care whether they pay 0.5%, 0.5% or 0.7. They don't want to integrate in 27 methods in 27 countries, right?
Yeah.
And Apple Pay, just this integration in an app like Pay with Apple Pay is just so
seamless.
And also let's give credit where credit is due, because European banks try to do this with European telcos. The question is who was more greedy, whether the banks or the telcos, but it didn't work. Many people thought that you can't have mobile payments, that also there's even psychological reason that you pay with money, not with the card, not with the phone. But look at us all now, right? I mean, and this especially for the TikTok users were mentioned by Andre a couple of times. The generation that scrolls on the phone nonstop, just double clicking, beeping, and scrolling more is just.
If I can add on that, I've seen a study where the conclusion was that mobile phone payment does not only ease the pain of paying, but it provides genuine satisfaction. So people really like to tap their phones. They like to scan QR codes. So they gain physical satisfaction from operating that mobile device, which is nice, and I think unheard of in payments. So people liking to pay is something not that we see often. So just an interesting note.
You want to have
Yes.
some questions?
How
from
much
the
time do you
audience?
have?
We have 5 more minutes.
Okay. Actually, that was my next point. Is there anything that you would like to ask in terms of EPI that you don't know or that you don't understand? Or I mean, I have lots of questions, but I think it's good now that there are not so many that we have a kind of more interactive session. So, who wants to go first? I don't know. Who is from a country that has a strong local scheme? Anyone from Poland? Anyone from Switzerland? Anyone from the Netherlands? Huh? Who raised the hand? Okay. From which country are you? Switzerland. Twinned. Okay. So, I don't know. You tell us maybe some of your experience, or is there a question? Do you think that this can work? If you can repeat, because I don't think we can hear you.
So, in Switzerland we have Twint, and Twint was launched, I can't remember the exact date, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, but it just exploded. And it didn't explode through any mandatory requirements or any advertising. It was through peer, just people downloading it. The banks adopted it. They started showing the benefits of peer-to-peer payments, sharing your meal receipts, QR payments, all in one app, paying for your parking. And it's just exploded. And it's only exploded through word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I think this is what will happen when EPI launch this wallet or app in June. It will launch in the Netherlands, it will launch in Germany, it will launch in France. All those countries, most of those banks have actually addressed their separate requirements. And it will mainly, my personal opinion is it will mainly be leveraged initially by people who constantly travel to those different regions. Those particular countries, like the Netherlands, for example, when it comes to modern technologies, they are first adopters. And those individuals that do travel from one country to another, you'll have one application that you can make a payment with in the Netherlands, in Germany, in France, as you travel around. We know the Dutch love to drive everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's going to create the adoption for the instant payment wallet. And it will follow a principle like Switzerland did.
Back to your point, I think this is in line with what I mentioned before. It started from peer-to-peer, right? And that's what they want to do as well
Exactly,
here.
yeah. So peer-to-peer, and now B2B is expanding into that area
Exactly.
and many other areas.
And
So they have to start that, and they've got to get the people using it for it to be adopted across the region. And then all the other countries, doesn't matter, Portugal, Spain, Italy, all of those guys, they'll all come on board when everyone else is using it, because that's what happened in most of these countries. It's all about the customers driving demand. It's not going to be pushed out by any company or by any central infrastructure.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions or? Okay, so very, very quickly, last question to both of you. Is it for Europe the last chance we have for payments independence? Or, if EPI fails, you think we're going to have another one? Or we keep every 3-4 years launching an initiative? Do you think we have this luxury? Or?
Well, I think saying it's the last opportunity is a bit on extreme side. I don't believe that. I'd say more that it's a golden opportunity, because it's something that is already moving. It needs to, whether or not it will gain enough traction, we will have to see. We will have to see if the model is competitive enough, and if they can convince the rest of the Europe to come on board. But I'd say we have already other alternatives. Digital euro may come to at least cover some space. Other initiatives may also come. As I was saying, this European Mobile Association are trying to come up with a bottom-up solution with this kind of roaming concept, where you take your local mobile application and you just move like your mobile phone and you just pay, which is interesting for customers, to be honest. So I would not say it's the last one. I'd say we will have to see what the market defines. In any case, since this is the last interaction, I would be more than happy to continue this discussion outside. You can find me in our booth outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it our last chance?
I'm eternally optimistic, so I don't think it's the last chance. I think it's a good chance, and also there are things that don't work so well in the card world, and I think there is a chance to just improve on them. I think one big annoyance for all of us who travel is DCC, right? So of course it's the banks doing it themselves, because they can get easy profit from people who are not their customers. But if you could, that's something that EPI could perhaps fix for the traveling population, and make withdrawing cash from ATM or paying happier and less stressful experience. So I definitely do see potential there. And also a big topic for us in the central banks now is, as we transfer to less cash world, and try to decrease the energy consumption of paying. Of course, making payments more efficient, less expensive as a percentage of GDP. It's a big goal. So of course, part of that is taking out the fees that go to states now at the moment, right? If you think about it, what Visa and MasterCard are charging are in a way like an extra VAT on every digital transaction that we do cross-border. We could use those money, at least we could tax them here in Europe.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.